Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Tom Silverstein. Spoon, it's draft week. We made it.
Yeah, it is. It is. All the marathon's about to begin.
It is. I know there's already speculation about picks and what will happen. And, of course, will the Packers actually take a wide receiver in the first round? General Manager Brian Gutekunst spoke to media today just to sort of preview the week. Shocker of all shockers, he did not tell us what their plan is and what they're going to do with all 11 of their picks that they have in this upcoming draft. He also mentioned, Spoon, that this is probably the most picks they've had in the first 3 rounds than in recent years. I know you've done a lot of draft nights with the Packers over the past 30 years. When was the last time you can remember them having this many picks in the first 3 rounds? And how do you think that shifts their approach?
Well, it's been a while. I haven't gone back and looked exactly when they've been even close to that, but it's sort of like Ron Wolf, their former general manager, said, the more picks you got, the better chance you have of being right. And so I think, this is a chance for them to take a couple of swings at some positions, but it's really just a good chance to build, youth and low-priced youth, because this is a team that's going to face salary cap issues for the next couple of years. And, the more they hit on these young guys, the easier it's going to be on their cap. I also think it does allow them to take somebody who's either a little more in the developmental stage or someone who's hurt, take a gamble on someone who's hurt. Whereas, previous years, you probably didn't have that luxury, and they may have that luxury this year.
Mm-hmm. Someone like a Jameson Williams, perhaps, from Alabama, who has that ACL tear.
Yeah, there's a number of guys in the draft who are coming off injuries. Ojabo from Michigan is another guy. There's quite a few who have some sort of injury that, makes it possible that they won't play this year. So it's gives you a chance to take a risk on those guys.
I see we've got a couple of questions coming in. If you have any questions for Spoon about the draft, go ahead and drop them in the comments. We're going to get to them here in just a minute. Before we do, one thing, a particular note that I thought Brian Gutekunst said today was he was asked about the possibility of trading up or down. They have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. They have 2 in the first round at 22 and 28, thanks to that trade with the Las Vegas Raiders for Devontae Adams. And that gives them a little bit more draft capital, a little bit of flexibility. And Spoon, I want to hear your thoughts on this. But before we do, let's just hear what Brian Gutekunst himself had to say about the possibility of making a trade for the picks.
I think there's a lot of conversations over the last week. Certainly there'll be some more in the next couple of days. But it'd be nice, to have some of those things ironed out before you got into it. But that's not always the way it works. Having more picks kind of in the top 3 rounds than we've had in a while. I think there's probably temptations on both sides to move around a little bit or just to sit and pick as well. So we'll kind of see what's available, and I think a lot of it's just going to be how the draft falls. But it is some of the conversations this week are just trying to kind of set things up to see what availability we have to move up or down.
So Spoon, as he said, conversations already happening this week to see what availability is there to move up or down. As we said, 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. He also later said that the key to doing that is to know where the board is strong, what units are strong, what part of the draft is strong. I know you've talked ad nauseum about this draft being really, really strong in the middle. And so Gutekunst is basically saying if we know where the draft is strong, if we know where the board is strong, we have a lot more flexibility to move around. All of that being said, what are your thoughts? Do you see a possibility of trading some of these picks away to move back, to get some capital for next year, to move up, to try to maybe grab some of those wide receivers who could get gone on a run? What do you see happening?
Well, I don't see a lot of desire for teams to move up. Maybe at the end of the first round when teams might want to try to get a quarterback and get him in the first round so they get that fifth-year option. That comes automatic with anybody who's in the first round. So they may want to, take a run at a quarterback late in the round. But I don't think there's a lot of reason, unless you're desperate for a position, to move up. And the only way that I see that happening is if there's a lot of bargains. If people are like, well, if Jacksonville says, just for instance, or the Jets or someone up there, Houston, we're better off with multiple picks. We're not going to be able to get a ton for this number one pick. Nobody's clamoring to get up. So we'll maybe not give up as much as we normally would for that pick. Then if, I'm Brian Gutekunst, then I'd think about making that move. But if I was him, I think they're positioned pretty well to do well. I think if you push too far up ahead, then you're sort of possibly paying more for the same type of guy you're going to get at the end of the first round or at the end of the top of the second round. I kind of think there's not that much difference. There's just not these ready-made star players available. And so I think it's a little bit of a mistake unless it's a real bargain to move up.
I saw a report earlier today from NFL Network, I believe it was, that said there had been more phone calls this year than in any recent years about possibly trading back. So many teams in that first half, those first 15 picks wanting to trade back. I know Jacksonville is taking offers for that number one pick. So we'll see what happens. There might be a lot of moving and shaking on Thursday night.
Or none.
Or none. Yes.
I mean, if nobody, if it sounds to me like it's, a buyer's market and not a seller's market. So it's possible everybody just stays put and maybe you have a little bit of movement, for a couple of picks to make sure you get somebody.
It's a very good point. As we mentioned, Brian Gutekunst said that the key to possibly trading is to know where the board is strongest. Wide receiver is arguably one of the strongest units this year available. There's a ton of it. It's not even necessarily that it's top heavy. It's just deep with wide receivers. Levi asked, he says, I'm not seeing George Pickens in any round one mocks. Is round one too early for George Pickens? Would they double dip at wide receiver in round one, possibly even round two? I'm adding on to his question here. There have been a few mocks that have George Pickens coming to the Packers in the second round. I believe they pick around 52. I want to say it is 54, somewhere right around there. There have been several mocks with Pickens coming in the second round. Is that one of those positions where you can go later? I know there's a lot of Packers fans that want to see a receiver taken in the first round. Can you afford to wait till the second day there?
Absolutely, you can. I don't think there is not Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase in this draft. There's some solid guys that probably deserve to go in the first round, but they're not a surefire playmaker type guys like Jefferson or Chase. It's not even close. So I think if you sit and you wait till the second round, you got a chance. And and then if there's a run at the top of the second round, he's got the ability to move around. So because of the extra picks, he's got those 2 fourth rounders that should allow him to move around the second round. So I would have, no problem if he did not take a receiver in the first round, or if he waited till number 28 to take one. I just don't think, you're going to get the kind of guy everybody thinks you're going to get. I think they've had so much success in the second round that it's okay to wait until then. As far as George Pickens, there's a lot to like there, but there's some injury concerns there, and I think that's going to drop him. I think he only played in like, what, 4 games as a senior because he was coming off, I believe it was an ACL. And so
last spring, he tore his ACL last spring. Yes.
Yeah, and so he didn't play a lot. And I mean, that's the kind of bargain type guy you might be able to get in the second round because teams are a little bit leery about taking him because they didn't really see him perform. And he never had like a monster year for Georgia. So I think that's a guy you would wait for and not try to rush on.
You know what people like about George Pickens, Spoon?
Mm-hmm.
You know how corners like make it part of their game to trash talk and get in the opponent's head?
Mm-hmm.
That is how George Pickens plays it as well. I've never seen someone as willing or as ready to throw a punch in the middle of a play.
Well, that's not exactly a great idea.
I guess it depends on what kind of attitude you want. If he can tamp it down a little bit to where he's not getting in trouble or hurting anyone, but just kind of annoying them.
Yeah, didn't he like spray water on somebody or something like that?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think he did. Like, yeah, he's got a little bit of that feisty.
Jalen Ramsey. Yeah, he's got a little bit of that in him. Steve says, with such a deep wide receiver class, as we've been talking about, could the Packers go edge or another position in the first and then go wide receiver in the second? You've already answered the wide receiver in the second part, but let's talk about some of these other positions they could go after in the first. Brian Gutekunst today spoke again about how talented the interior lines in this draft are. Tackle especially, and that's one of those that is top heavy, where you might have to go tackle in the first round if you want to really get an elite guy, someone that could be on your line for the next 10 years, couple of guards as well. What are some of the positions that you would see would be the most beneficial, economical, long-term to go after in the first round?
Well, there's possibilities for guys in the first round, for sure. I mean, there's a couple of, there's a couple of risks, that you could try taking later. With like Devontae Wyatt from Georgia, who's got some off the field stuff that he's one of the guys the Packers brought in for a visit, for sure, to talk about his character, I'm sure. But he's one of the best physically, he's one of the best interior defensive linemen. It's possible he could fall because reportedly teams are taking him off their boards. There's another kid, Perion Winfrey from Oklahoma, who's been kind of a riser, supposedly. He could be a guy late in the first round, a defensive lineman. There's edge rushers for sure. There's a lot of edge rushers. I don't know if there's a lot of great ones. If there's a Joey Bosa or even a Rashawn Gary in there, but there is some talent, and there's so many of them that you're bound to hit on somebody. And I don't know if that'd be in the first round. And I'm not going to completely rule out them taking a defensive back. I know everybody thinks, well, they got everything, they're all set in the defensive backfield. Well, you can't have enough corners, and you probably, there's some guys who can play a little bit of a hybrid corner safety position, which I wouldn't be surprised if they address that too. Like if they really think one of those corners can help them in the slot or can sort of be a dime corner, I wouldn't be surprised if they pull a trigger on that. So I think they will help their defense. And then tackle, like you mentioned, a lot of that is going to depend on what kind of run there is. If all of a sudden they start getting gobbled up, then I think for sure you'll see them take one. But if they think they can get one in the second round, then maybe they wait.
Yeah. As Scott said, would love to get Penning. I don't want to burst your bubble, but the chances of Penning still being there at 22 seems slim.
Maybe. I don't know that, and I don't know if he's exactly what they want in a tackle. I know he's nasty and everything, but there's some other guys who are pretty good, that have some pretty good upside that I'm sure they'll be looking at with the first pick.
Yeah, Levi mentioned Kenyon Green from Texas A&M, possibly there at 28. I want to touch on something. I know we're about out on time, but I just want to touch on something you said real quick about possibly finding a slot guy, a slot corner in early on. Do you think that's just to keep Jair from playing there?
Well, I think it gives them more options. I think ideally they'd like to keep Jair Alexander outside, and that's where I think he probably wants to play. And I think that's probably where they can keep him healthy. I think they're ready to play him there if they have to. But man, if you can have another slot corner, I mean, they sort of have to replace Chandon Sullivan. And if there's a guy there who can play that position, and then maybe even drop back and play a little bit of safety or play outside corner, shoot, you could be set for who knows how many years with Alexander, Stokes, Rasul Douglas. And then at some point they're gonna move on from Adrian Amos, and we don't know what'll happen with Darnell Savage. He'll be a free agent. We have to find out whether they're going to put the 5th-year option on him or submit the tender for the 5th-year option on him. So there's a lot of things at play there.
Spoon, before we let you go, I'm just going to throw a couple of quick questions at you. Just go with your gut, okay? Let me like when the psychiatrist holds up the blot pictures. But before I do, someone asked, is there any concerns that Penning played at UNI? Does that not worry teams? I feel like based on what we've heard at off season so far at the Combine, Senior Bowl, the way he held his own at the Senior Bowl, the way he performed at the Combine, I don't think that's a worry where he
No, that's a good school. I mean, that's a good football school. They are really competitive, and there's some good players who come out of there. So I don't think that's a big factor.
Yeah. First quick question. Good question from Levi. Packer team doctors always play it safe. Would they want to risk Jameson Williams in round 1?
Maybe. I wouldn't completely rule that out. If he, somehow fell to maybe 28, I guess they could consider it at 22. It's no different. I guess then if they signed Odell Beckham, you're going to be waiting for him. But more than likely, if you're taking him, you're going to sit him out the whole year and then, develop him the next year. But at what point, you have to make the decision, at what point is he the equivalent of a first-round pick? Is it at 29? Is it at 17? What's the value there? And I'm not smart enough to know what that is. So, I'll let the GMs figure that one out.
I think you're smart enough. Last one, just real good. Real good question from Lindell. Do you think the Packers will take a quarterback late? And what about a long snapper? I know we've talked about that Western Kentucky quarterback as someone that could come in and push Rodgers in training camp. And then do they draft a long snapper as well?
I don't think they have to take a quarterback this year. I'm usually a guy who says you should take a quarterback every year, but next year is probably a better year to try to take somebody. It's a better class. If there's, and plus, if you're talking about taking quarterback, it's in the 7th round, right? Or, I don't think they take one as high as the 5th. They don't have a 6th. So, and it's going to just be, a height, weight, size prospect, and it's not going to be anybody who's ready to play. So, yeah, I mean, I could see them doing that. Why not? As for a long snapper, I think they kind of learned their lesson that's not worth the risk is drafting a guy there. There are people out there that have to be at least as good as a draft pick. So I'd be leery about doing that.
Yeah. Might see them actually go veteran free agent this time. There's lots of other good questions in here about tight ends, about specific receivers. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to all of them. We are hosting a Packers News virtual draft party tomorrow night, starting at 6 p.m. It's on Zoom. It is for Packers News, JS Online, Green Bay Press Gazette subscribers. If you are a subscriber, you can find that post on Packers News with the invitation to that Zoom, like I said, that starts tomorrow night at 6 p.m. And if you're not a subscriber, please sign up. I know that they're always running deals. Go ahead and sign up so you can hop into that Zoom tomorrow. We'll be there for about an hour on the Zoom, answering all of these questions and more. And of course, with the ability to go a lot more in depth tomorrow night. So please join us for that. Spoon, thank you as always. I'll see you tomorrow night.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's going to be a blast. We did it last year and it was really successful. That's why we're doing it again. People get a chance. We get a chance to see readers and readers get a chance to see us. And it's almost like a big panel discussion. So it's a lot of fun and it's worth, what, the $1 subscription for 6
Right,
months?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
Our editor told me that this used to be hosted at a bar before COVID. So everybody bring your drink of choice, I guess. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. Anyways, thanks so much, guys. We'll see you tomorrow night.